Welcome to Unity. If you don't know who I am, I'm Santisha Groverland. I am one of the associate ministers here, and I'll be leading the service the next service. And my topic is the rising phoenix from the ashes, and how we can consciously get into a state of really being in power through this deep time of change, and how we're all feeling it fluctuating our personal lives, and things are being unearthed in our lives to grow us in a beautiful way so that we're ready to expand with the consciousness that is awakening on this planet. So today we're going to be singing into that as well, and just recognizing spirit and knowing that it's moving in and through everything, and everything is in divine order no matter what it looks like on the outside, to stay in that faith and in that truth that we all chose to be here at this time, and that we're co-creators with this greater potential, this greater love. So let's sing into that potential and that love, and see it radiating all around this planet, through all the minds of the people that have power to make changes, and to know that we are part of this co-creation for a greater planet and a greater world. So they say to sing is to pray twice, and so Norma and I will be doing the calling, and we have Joel and Louie doing the response today. Golden light in the candle flame. Golden light in the candle flame. Deep in you, I feel the same. Deep in you, I feel the same. Open to the holy, holy stillness. Open to the holy, holy stillness. God is love, loving, beloved. God is love, loving, beloved. Spirit of ecstasy. Spirit of ecstasy. We are one with beloved. We are
We are one with beloved. We are one with beloved. Beloved, golden light in the candle flame. Golden light in the candle flame. Deep in you, I feel the same. Deep in you, I feel the same. Open to the holy, holy stillness. Open to the holy, holy stillness. God is love, loving beloved. God is love, loving beloved. Beloved, beloved, beloved.
As always, we'll need a couple of volunteers to help clear the altar after the service in preparation for the next service. And that is very appreciated. I want to start this morning with this passage from the Gospel. Can we have this first PowerPoint, please? You can read this in Matthew chapter 8, verses 18 to 22. Now, when Jesus saw great crowds around him, he gave orders to go over to the other side. And a scribe came up to him and said, Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go. And Jesus said to him, Foxes have holes, and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. Another of the disciples said to him, Lord, let me first go and bury my father. But Jesus said to him, Follow me and leave the dead to bury their own dead. This scripture indicates that the world is such that foxes and birds have a home here, a place that they can go to and relate to that will bring them rest. Whereas the Son of Man, which can be interpreted the soul of man, has nowhere to lay his head. Speaking that the Son of Man has nowhere to find his home in the world. So when we talk about the world, we're talking about our initial state of consciousness or awareness. So that we were born into and raised in the idea of being physical, mind-thinking beings. And with that comes the idea of separation. We're all separated into these different seeming personalities. And so that entire definition of life assumes that we can find a home here in the world, in the thinking of the world, which is strictly physical and material. But what the masters of life are saying is that you cannot find a home here. You have no place to rest your head. In other words, you cannot find fulfillment in the initial state of consciousness. As long as your thinking is defined as being physical, that you are a separate physical personality in a world of separate phenomena, you will never find fulfillment in that. And so your life, you may go on, because the mind does go on, ever trying to bring this self-centered idea into fruition. The mind is forever thinking and planning to try to find completion and freedom and peace. And it does all kinds of things and manners of things to accomplish that, but it cannot be accomplished because we are spiritual. Our origin is spiritual. It is not physical. So we're going through this process, and we'll never be able to find completion, happiness, or peace in the process of thinking and attempting to bring wholeness, happiness from the world. It can't happen. It never has happened for anyone. One must transcend the thinking of the world. One must enter into the second higher state of awareness. That is why this biblical character called Jesus, saying, "Follow me." In other words, to follow me, you have to understand you're talking about a transformation from the world itself, because you're not a fox and you're not a bird and you're not a creature of the world. You are a divine spiritual being. You must find that consciousness. And then the second disciple says, I will follow you. And please understand that this Jesus is the Christ of all, the true self of every living person. So while we needed a man, historically speaking, because we're born in the illusions of time and space, we needed a man to read and think about and follow for a while, but Jesus disappears as a man and becomes the universal consciousness that every person must enter to find life and find it abundantly. So the second disciple says, let me first go and bury my father. And Jesus says to him, let the dead bury the dead. This sounds, when we think about Jesus and the way we interpret Jesus in our mind, it's hard for us to understand him saying something as inconsiderate or as harsh as this to a disciple who says, well, just let me go and bury my father and I will follow you. But he is saying, let the dead bury the dead. You follow me. Could it be any plainer? Of course, you took the Bible when you were younger, took it and read it, and you had your whole life. Your mind wanted you out in that world. You're going to figure it out. You're going to get it right. Okay, but here you see what is actually being said, and what I am sharing with you is the actual truth of it. Those who are still operating in their illusionary consciousness, the initial state of consciousness of being strictly physical, bound to traditions and manners and the thinking and the rightness of the thinking of the world. Let me go and bury my father. And what this whole idea is a reference to, everyone in that consciousness is spiritually dead. All of them still following traditions and the rules and the machinations of governments and ideas shared by people. It's all futile. There's no happiness to be found in it. One must enter into the Christ self, the Christ consciousness. And so these passages are making no bones about it, because the mind fragments and stays fragmented. And we cannot find peace in the fragmentation of the world. So we wonder how Jesus could have said such a thing. Jesus is the truth. Didn't define himself as a man. He defined himself as the truth within each of us. And we must come to that truth. I think the problem with our understanding, even at this late point in our evolution, is that we still think from the personal point of view. We think about love, we think about personal love. Jesus should be personally loving. Jesus should be hugging us and caring for us and feeding us in this physical consciousness. But that idea is personal. And the personal idea of love is reciprocal. It comes from a limited interpretation of self. And we must transcend the personal in order to enter into the universal. We must, through our spiritual practice, raise the idea of self, change the interpretation of self, and life will change with it. And that's what our calling is. Follow me. Follow the truth. that is within you. And you can find your way into an expanded or universal level of consciousness, which is not personal, is not reciprocal, but is universal. Until such a transformation in awareness is in progress, we are considered spiritually dead. There is a spiritual teacher, Satsang, who did all the wrong things in life and attempted to do a lot of the right things in life before he came into the truth, the enlightened truth. And he did more of the wrong things than I did. And he did more of the wrong things than many people did. And he was a person who was interested in, from an early age. At the age of 12, he wanted to be a priest. He went on from there, and he wanted to find the truth in the New Age, in the Eastern religions. He went on and he did all of the things that had to do with getting psychics and listening to channels and trying to find a way into this or that. And he sold drugs, really heavy-duty drugs, to make himself very wealthy. And he had homes in this country and other countries. And in the end, it all came crashing in on him. And he went to prison. And everything he had gained was sold off. The government took it all. And in prison, it even got worse because he was awaiting sentence, and he was in a county jail in Florida for 2 years. And in this jail, there were no windows. And in these different cells, the cell was made for 14 men. They had 30, 34 men sometimes, those numbers. And there were no windows, and it was hot, and there was no air conditioning. And while he was in there, he was always in there with many of the really limited thinking criminals that were put in that jail. And they were gangbangers, and they had this boom box, and they'd play rap music. And he, up until the point that he went to jail, I mean, all the years that he was in legal machinations to try to save himself, he was on a spiritual journey. And all he wanted to do was meditate. He wanted peace. He wanted to try to find his way to God. But here, for 2 years, he was in this sweat box. And these guys with these boom boxes playing rap music for 24/7 a day. And he would lay on his bunk and try to cover his ears, and he put cotton in his ears. And then one day when he was doing that, he just looked out at these characters, these petty criminals. And something came over him that I have experienced as well, and some of you as well. He saw only his brothers. And then he actually heard how God hears rap music. And it was so beautiful. It opened his heart, and he cried. Those are just some of the experiences he had on his way. He went to jail after that. When they finally sentenced him, after 2 years of that, he went to prison. And in prison, he had a number of experiences. It wasn't the best conditions for a spiritual life. But he came to understand that all of this New Age training he had gone through, and he went through years of it, the channels, the psychics, the drugs, the rolfing, the spiritual this and the meditations that, and all of this and that and this and that, and he did it to the nth degree, he realized this. There is only God. Now you may say things happen to people, and some terrible things happen to people, and some people don't live a very long time, and they have a terrible accident, and something goes this way and that way. Come with me to this place where we understand the beginning of the journey into the consciousness divine is knowing we don't know. We do not know what is really, really good or what is really, really bad in a grander scheme of things that has to do with the universe. And not just this tiny world in which we have created the limited laws of human beings trying to get by in a thinking system that defies peace, honor, integrity, love, understanding, defies it. You were born with it. It's stuck inside your heart until you pull it out. So we must think in terms of the universal. He found his way into that. Just as every true teacher, every true seeker finds his way into the consciousness divine, which means a transformation of universal consciousness coming through, whereas the personal is subjugated to the universal. Getting one's own way in reciprocal conditions of attempting to make personal love work this way and that way, that is subjugated. You find yourself in such a space of awareness that in giving, wherever it is that you give, you are blessed. It's universal. It has no strings. There is no me and what I can get from thee. There is only God. So let's have this. We're going to have a revelation here as well from Alan Watts. Can we have the film, please? I think I may have skipped one of the... I did. It's okay.
This is therefore to say that transformation of human consciousness through meditation is frustrated so long as we think of it in terms of something that I myself can bring about by some kind of wangle, by some sort of gimmick. Because you see, that leads to endless games of spiritual one-upmanship and of guru competitions, of my guru is more effective than your guru, my yogas are faster than your yoga, I'm more aware of myself than you are, I'm humbler than you are, I'm sorrier for my sins than you are, I love you more than you love me. There is interminable goings-on about which people fight and wonder whether they're a little bit more evolved than somebody else and so on. All that can just fall away. And then we get this strange feeling that we have never had, you see, in our lives, except occasionally by accident. Some people get a glimpse that we are no longer this poor little stranger and afraid in a world it never made, but that you are this universe, and you are creating it at every moment, because you see, it starts now. It didn't begin in the past. There was no past. See, if the universe began in the past, when that happened, it was now. See, well, it's still now. And the universe is still beginning now, and it's trailing off like the wake of a ship from now. And the wake of the ship fades out, so does the past. You can look back there to explain things, but the explanation disappears. You'll never find it there. Things are not explained by the past. They're explained by what happens now. That creates the past. And it begins here. That's the birth of responsibility. Because otherwise, you can always look over your shoulder and say, well, I'm the way I am because my mother dropped me. And she dropped me because she was neurotic because her mother dropped her. Now away we go back to Adam and Eve or to a disappearing monkey or something. We never get at it. But in this way, you're faced with it, you're doing all this. And that's an extraordinary shock. So, cheer up. You can't blame anyone else for the kind of world you're in. And if you know, you see that I, in the sense of the person, the front, the ego, really doesn't exist, then it won't go to your head too badly if you wake up and discover that you're God.
So now, we're at a certain place where we need to have a somewhat more touchable yoga. Can we have this last PowerPoint, please? Course in Miracles 186, paragraph 2, the new edition 201. Never forget that the sonship is your salvation, for the sonship is yourself. As God's creation, it is yours, and belonging to you, it is His. Yourself does not need salvation, but your mind needs to learn what salvation is. You are not saved from anything, but you are saved for glory. Glory is your inheritance, given you by your Creator, that you might extend it. Yet if you hate part of yourself, all your understanding is lost, because you are looking on what God created as yourself without love. And since what He created is part of Him, you are denying Him His place in His own altar. Can we have this back again, please? Never forget that the sonship is your salvation, for the sonship is yourself. Again, this is a very clear reference to the at-one-ment that A Course in Miracle is forever sharing with us. The sonship includes everyone and everything that lives. And therefore, we are called to understand that. Come into the awareness of the one in all, the all in one. You can drop all the other religious rules and regulations, because you enter the awareness of the one in all and the all in one. You simply will operate from that higher love, consideration, and caring. You can leave here today and know, as you move in the changing tides and circumstances of life, there is only God. We're going to enter that place in meditation, allowing these Tibetan bowls to help us vibrate right here, right now. Look at that. What's happening to us if we do this? You're becoming more satisfied. If you sit here today, right now, with this meditation, and become more satisfied, what are we talking about? Nothing more is needed, wanted, necessary. Nothing is missing. You just became more satisfied and at peace with everything as it is, because it is as it is by virtue of the will of God. If you don't have a particular meditation technique, when we get to the silence, you can use this particular mantra. I am in you, you are in me. I am the truth that will make you free. Be still and know that I am God. As we go forth from this meditation to those places we occupy in time and space, let us go forth in the understanding, becoming aware whenever I am not satisfied is a step into the higher consciousness. And then recognizing how your thoughts are defeating your peace and your truth of being here and now. For this opportunity to practice the presence in every moment, let us give thanks, and to this we say amen. We will take an offering for unity now. As we take our offerings in our hands, let's bless them with this offering statement. Divine love is my true life and my conscious destiny. Therefore, I give. Together, please. Divine love is my true life and my conscious destiny. Therefore, I give.
Acceptable in
How wonderful it is to know everything that happens is an opportunity to draw us closer to the presence and the majesty of God. Amen.